السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بفضل الله، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف خلق الله سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وصحبه الأخيار المنتجبين، وعلى جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، يقول الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: والمؤمنون والمؤمنات بعضهم أولياء بعض يأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر ويقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة ويطيعون الله ورسوله أولئك سيرحمهم الله إن الله عزيز حكيم. Quran chapter 9 verse 71. Allah says the believers, the men and women, are guardians for one another. They look after each other. They encourage good and forbid evil. They establish prayer and pay alms tax. They obey God and His Messenger. It is they who will be shown God's mercy. Surely God is Almighty, All-Wise. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly is saying that believers support each other. Believers are awliya. They are awliya. They are guardians of each other. We mentioned in the past many times that when we talk about iman, mu'minun, mu'min, people of faith, men and women, it means that they have this faith that manifests itself at different levels and in different dimensions. One dimension is the dimension of the intellectual belief, intellectual faith, that we intellectually believe that there is God and God is one and God is powerful and all merciful and all the names that we know about God. This is an intellectual level of faith or belief. We said that this has to translate to a sentimental level whereby you feel God in your heart, whereby actually there is a trace of this belief on your heart. This trace makes you feel this attraction towards other believers just because they are mu'mineen, just because they are believers. You feel attracted to them. It manifests in this heart. And so you have this level of connection with the other believer, with the mu'min. A level of connection, existential connection, just like the magnet attracts metal. Only because two people are believers, they have this level of attraction that happens spiritually. And obviously, the level of faith or the dimensions of faith don't end there. The faith or the iman has to manifest as well in action. I can't say that I believe in God, I love God, and I don't translate it in action. And I don't show God that I pray, I obey His command, I pray on time, I exert the effort to be a good servant of God. You can't say that faith is only in the heart. If you don't manifest it in action, what you have is probably not faith, and you need to introspect more. And so we remember this beautiful narration from the Holy Messenger of God, Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, where he would say, مثل المؤمنين في توادهم وتراحمهم وتعاطفهم مثل الجسد. Like the believers, the example of their unity, their love for each other, their compassion towards each other is the example of one body. One body. That if one organ in that body, if one part of that body suffers from pain, the whole body would suffer as well in sleeplessness and sickness. Can't say that this believer is suffering and I have nothing to do with it and therefore I can't do anything about it. You have a responsibility to respond to the call of anyone who is calling for your support, anyone who is calling for your help. Because the unity, because the bond that connects you with that person is like the bond of family. Like God says, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةً. Believers are peers, brothers and sisters of each other. And this is higher than the bond of blood. Faith is indeed a very strong bond. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, that He may help us support each other, support Muslims, Muslim communities, Support oppressed communities, whether they're Muslim or not, everywhere in the world, inshallah. And whenever any call comes towards us for support, we ask God to enable us, inshallah, to support. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wal-'asr. Innal insana lafi khusr. إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وصفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك. اللهم وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين، عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك وحجتك على خلقك وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم. وصل على الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. صل على سبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة أجمعين. وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي، حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك، صلاة كثيرة دائمة. عباد Allah, أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله والورع عن محارمه. My dear brothers, my dear sisters, I remind myself and yourselves to observe taqwa, to stick to the command of God, to stay away from what God has prohibited. Bismillah al-Muntaqim al-Jabbar. Bismillah Qasim al-Jabbarin. Bismillah Mubir al-Zalimin, Mudrik al-Zalimin, Nakal al-Zalimin, Sarikh al-Mustasrikhin. To the souls of the marhumin, to the souls of the shuhada, the Sayyid, to the souls of those who stood with resilience face to face against the war machine of the criminal, genocidal, serial murdering, ethno-supremacist, Zionist entity, the so-called Israel, to the souls of those who refused the Yazidi humiliation and took the Husseini stance, who said, ألا أن الداعي ابن الداعي قد ركز بين اثنتين بين السلة والذلة وهيهات منا الذلة. They said that they offer us the two options of death or humiliation, never to humiliation. To the souls of those who came centuries after Hussein, but they still did not leave Hussein, and would shout loudly, ما تركتك يا حسين, I did not leave you, O Hussein. To the souls of those who continued to stand up no matter the sacrifices, even if it meant that their own lives would be taken in support of the helpless, innocent families massacred in Gaza. To the souls of those who did not cease to say words of wisdom, of justice, of freedom, of truth, as reminders to the whole world, even if it or these words fell on deaf ears again and again. To their souls, let's please recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Brothers and sisters, last week, the so-called Israel committed the act of assassinating Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, escalating the situation in Lebanon and putting the region of West Asia at the brink of a regional war. The Zionists expanded their terrorism now to aggression against all of Lebanon. The Zionist Prime Minister, you might have seen that he recently addressed the Iranian people, clearly showing intentions of a wider escalation, an expansion that reaches even Iran. And we saw the maps that this person lifted and showed in front of the United Nations Assembly. Jared Kushner, a former senior advisor to the President of the United States, President Trump back then, he tweeted after the assassination of Sayyid Nasrallah. He said that this was significant because Iran is now, quote, fully exposed. Now Iran is fully exposed. And that Israel now must continue the job, as he said. He said that anyone who has been calling for a ceasefire in the north, meaning the borders with Lebanon, is wrong, and that there is no going back for Israel. He continues, they cannot afford now to not finish the job and completely dismantle the arsenal that has been aimed at them. They will never get another chance. This is what this person is saying. And he adds, he says, the right move now for America would be to tell Israel to finish the job. It's long overdue, and it's not only Israel's fight. These were the words of, or the tweets of Jared Kushner. He was the advisor of President Trump. The reason I'm mentioning this, brothers and sisters, is so that we know, or to anyone who thinks that there is a hope with the coming United States president, whoever that will be, that there is a hope that this war will come to an end or the situation will get better in West Asia. The Zionists assassinated Haniya, if you remember, a few months back on Iranian soil during the event of inauguration of the new president of Iran. And that direct aggression invited an Iranian response that the world witnessed a few days back against the Zionist military infrastructure used as basis for terrorism. That was pretty evident. And what is funny is that you might have come across some people, tweets, social media posts, people talking and saying what a failure it was because Iran was not able to harm any Israeli civilian. Wallahi, the sad thing about this world or the stage that we reach now, is that people think that killing civilians is a successful act of war. Wallahi, this is a sign of the Akhir al-Zaman. This is the sign of corruption. That people think that with what Israel is doing, killing and massacring civilians, that this is hospitals, ahsan, schools, medics, children, complete families, eliminating complete bloodlines. We've heard in Lebanon some news that some fighters who fought Israel in Lebanon in 1982, now Israel, with their intelligence, they gathered information and they are assassinating their brothers and their bloodline. In the sight of many people in the world, this is a failure. It's a failure that Hezbollah is not directing or not killing any civilians. They see this as a failure. Wallahi, it's such a disgrace on the forehead of this humanity that people, this day and age, they think like this. The Zionists in the last few weeks moved to a new wave of assassinations in Lebanon, peaking with the assassination of Sayyid Nasrallah. And it seems that the Zionists did not learn lessons from these assassinations or the outcomes of these assassinations. So let me quote a few questions that were posed by a writer by the name of Sameh Askar in this context. Let me share them with you. Did the assassination of Sayyid Nasrallah affect the strength and performance of the Lebanese resistance? Or did it give it a moral motive and a desire for revenge that led to the Israeli soldiers being hunted down yesterday and the day before in big numbers on the borders with Lebanon? Did this assassination lead to a regional calm? Or did it lead to expanding the battle to include Iran and soon Syria? Maybe with the support of Russia. Did the assassination of Sayyid Nasrallah achieve the goals of the Israeli ground invasion to Lebanon, mainly to return the Israeli settlers to the north? Or did it lead to the displacement of more settlers of new settlements? Did the assassination of Sayyidina Nasrullah bring Israel closer to the Arab and Muslim world? Or did it increase the popularity of the resistance, not only in the Arab world or the Muslim world, who celebrated a few days back the Iranian response of the 1st of October as an important victory of the nation? See what people in the world said. See how they celebrated that response. Not just among those people, the popularity of the resistance rose, but also amongst the foreign people who saw that the price paid by Israel was cheap and unbecoming, and that it had to pay higher prices. Another question is, which is more powerful now? Present and inspiring for the resistance fighters. Which is more present in their hearts and souls? Current leaders or assassinated leaders like Nasrullah? What did this assassination achieve for Israel? Another question is the idea of resisting the occupation the product of a leader that ends with his death? Or is it the product of the thought and faith of a nation and a people that remains as long as it remains? A question. Has Israel's image improved internationally after the assassination of Sayyidina Nasrullah? Or has it strengthened its terrorist image? Considering the methods of terrorists that were used in achieving political assassinations. Another question. Did the United States of America stand by Israel in the Iranian response? Or did it put the entire Israeli society in the line of fire to become a military target for 6 countries, with expectations of expanding the circle beyond these countries? And finally, is victory in wars historically decided by the political assassinations or by the performance in battle on the battlefield? A legitimate question. Or is it decided by also the moral project and the combat doctrine, all of which Israel seems to be missing a main aspect of? And with what combat doctrine does Israel enter this war while it is unable to fight except with American support and encouragement? What future does this entity have in the region? There is a famous political and intellectual principle that relying completely on others in wars means the absence of a project and means it's a proxy war. So Israel is in fact fighting on behalf of the United States of America, which planted or participated in planting the so-called State of Israel in the midst of an Arab Islamic environment that apparently will never accept it. And that will keep the future of that entity threatened as long as it remains. What's next? My brothers and sisters, it appears that Israel is indeed taking the region of West Asia to a total war, to subjugate the free people of the region, to pressure them to accept humiliation, to pressure them to despair and lose hope in the effectiveness of any resistance, and to normalize genocide and to normalize ethnic cleansing for colonial gains by Israel. What was Yazid's demand from Hussein other than this? What was Yazid's demand from the people of Medina other than the vow of allegiance such that they are subjects, slaves that can be sold and bought by Yazid? These were the terms that Yazid offered. And that he can do whatever he wishes with them. And on the other hand, what was the response of Hussein, despite the price that Hussein alayhi salam had to pay? Our role, my brothers and sisters, our role today is to support the people of Palestine and the people of Lebanon. Our role is to support every free people in this world today. Allah. Our role is to keep standing on the right side of history Our role today is to keep supporting the people of Palestine and the people of Lebanon, supporting those displaced currently in Lebanon, tens of thousands, who, with their patience, are taking the unbearable suffering of loss of their homes and loved ones, but are refusing humiliation, and are insisting on saying no to the Zionist war machine in words and in action. Our role today is to continue to raise awareness amongst the people around us on how one should remain suspicious of any Israeli linked products or supply chains, be it of electrical or electronic devices, software or hardware products, or any other day to day products that we might be using. You've probably heard that 2 weeks ago, Israel led a terrorist sabotage operation in Lebanon, detonating indiscriminately thousands of pagers and walkie talkies, killing many civilians, including children, and injuring thousands, many with life changing injuries. These victims were civilians, walking in the crowded markets, driving on the busy streets, working in hospitals and in offices. An act of terrorism that history never saw before. Attempting to kill 5,000 people, 5,000 devices were rigged. Attempting to kill 5,000 people in 1 minute. Israel again breaks a record in terrorism. My brothers and sisters, boycotting the products that are associated with Israel is not an option if you wish to protect yourself and your family from harm. It's a serious matter. One who rigs with explosives, devices used by thousands of civilian individuals, what can stop them from rigging software on your mobile phones to invade your private privacy? Or rigging Israeli-linked products that you or your children use in your day-to-day? Only because you or a friend of yours was labeled suspicious or enemy. This awareness needs to be spread wide and far. Our role today, brothers and sisters, is to do whatever we can to make our voices heard, to join the protests that are organized wherever you are, in support of Palestine, in support of Lebanon, in opposition to the Zionist continuing crimes against humanity, to keep exposing the true nature of Israel, that it is not but a failing, bloodthirsty, and disgraceful settler colonial project. This is the reality of what the state of Israel is. The bright future, brothers and sisters, is for those who defend their rights and the rights of the oppressed. It is for those who value human life, even the life of those who oppose them or maybe wish them ill. The bright future is for those who are humble before God and who devote their lives for justice, for freedom, for the lofty values of love and human life. The ones who turn their backs on God and on His will for respecting human life shall not see but disgrace in this world and in the next. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. I say this and I ask God to forgive me and forgive yourselves. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.